Welcome back to Good Orderly Direction, Practical Tools of the Bible. Today we're talking about Numbers chapter 9, the Passover. I'm your host, Dr. Donnelly Snipes. The Lord spoke to Moses in the desert of Sinai after they came out of Egypt, and he said, "Have the Israelites celebrate the Passover at the appointed time." But some of them could not celebrate the Passover on that day because they were ceremonially unclean. Moses asked God, who said those people who cannot celebrate because they are unclean or are traveling must celebrate the next month or be cut off. So God gives a little bit of wiggle room. He understands that sometimes the time and the place is not actually going to work. People can't be there for some reason. However, he doesn't say, all right, you get a pass on it. He says, you still have to do it, but you can do it the next month. The tabernacle, the tent of the covenant law, was set up and cloud covered it. From evening until morning, the cloud above the tabernacle looked like fire. Whenever the cloud lifted from above the tent, the Israelites set out. Wherever the cloud settled, the Israelites camped. Again, I know y'all get tired of me saying it makes sense, but it does. From a practical standpoint, you want to travel when the weather's good, when there's no fog, when there's no cloud hanging over you. And when there's a cloud hanging over you, you take the opportunity to rest. Back in those days, they didn't have electricity. They didn't have cars. They didn't have the benefits of modern technology that can help us keep going even when the conditions are not the best. So they were paying attention. They were acting prudently and moving when it was best and resting when it wasn't. Some scientists believe that these clouds could have been spawned by volcanic activity and ash. If it was, okay. If it was the Spirit of God, whatever you believe. But it's important to recognize the prudence here. The people who believed it was God are following God. They recognize when His presence is leading them, and they make their decisions based on that. The people who think it was a meteorological phenomenon, well, they're still making decisions based on the presence or absence of signs that travel will be good. In Numbers 10, the Lord said to Moses, "Make 2 trumpets of hammered silver and use them for calling the community together and for having camps set out. When both are sounded, the whole community is to assemble before you at the entrance to the tent of meeting. If only one is sounded, the leaders, the heads of the clans of Israel, are to assemble before you. When a trumpet blast is sounded, the tribes camping on the east are to set out. At the sounding of a second blast, the camps on the south are to set out. The blast will be the signal for setting out. To gather the assembly, blow the trumpets, but not with a signal for setting out." So this is sort of like early Morse code. These camps were huge gatherings of thousands, tens of thousands of people. So you couldn't just walk out of your tent and go, "Hey, everybody, we're getting ready to move." It was important to be able to communicate with the entire assembly. And the trumpets at this point were an effective means of communication. It's also interesting to note, remember, if you've heard trumpets, I think most of us have, that tends to be a higher pitched sound than some other things like a gong or whatever. Higher pitched sounds carry less than lower pitched ones, which also may have been an intentional choice to prevent alerting the enemies. You want the sound to go out far enough to alert the assembly, but you don't want your enemies to know what you're doing and when you're doing it. Back to scripture. When you go into battle in your own land against an enemy who's oppressing you, sound a blast on the trumpets. Then you will be remembered by the Lord your God and rescued from your enemies. So the trumpets are also used to call God, to help people sort of get focused. They hear that alarm, and it sort of triggers their fight or flight, but they know what they need to do. Also, at your times of rejoicing, your appointed festivals, you are to sound the trumpets over your burnt offerings and the fellowship offerings. So trumpets became a sign of important communication as well as impending battle. And of course, knowing about impending battle is also important communication. And it's important to recognize that God provided the tools to make trumpets. Where did trumpets come from? Somebody had to come up with this idea, and God provided the knowledge in someone to know how to make those tools in order to alert the community. God instructed the Israelites to leave Sinai. Moses said to Hobab, son of his father-in-law, "We're setting out for the place about which the Lord said, 'I will give it to you.' Come with us, and we will treat you well, for the Lord has promised good things to Israel." He answered, "No, I will not go. I'm going back to my own land and my own people." But Moses said, "Please don't leave us. You know where we should camp in the wilderness, and you can be our eyes. If you come with us, we will share with you whatever good things the Lord gives us." So this young man has skills and tools and talents that are useful to the community. They're a resource for the community. And Moses says, "Come on, we'll make it worth your while. You have been good to us. We will be good to you." Love. Well, let's think about this. Hobab's decision to join the Israelites on their journey has been interpreted as a sign of his faith and willingness to follow God's guidance, despite being from a different culture and religion. And that's important, especially today, to recognize that the community of God can embrace other people, can embrace people of different beliefs, but it's important that when they're embraced, they follow the traditions of the welcoming group. Some scholars view Hobab's inclusion in the Israelites' journey as a symbol of God's acceptance of people from diverse backgrounds who want to be part of his chosen people. Triggers and temptations are everywhere. Even Eve was tempted by the tree of knowledge. God and good orderly direction give us the ability to be tempted without acting. And why am I bringing this up right now? Because remember, we've seen in the past when the Israelites have communed with people from other cultures, they get tempted, and a lot of times they start going astray. And it's important to remember, whether it is in relationships or in life in general, temptations are everywhere, and nobody is immune. However, good orderly direction gives us the ability to encounter those temptations and use prudence and respect and all that other stuff and make the right decision. Choose not to act in a way that goes against our values. However, when it's clear that the people are too weak, sometimes the temptation is eliminated. And we do see this happen later in Scripture, where the people prove that they cannot commune with other cultures without adopting the practices of the other cultures. So God says, well, if they're going to lead you astray, wipe them out. I think it's important for us to recognize that culture was very different back then. And what made people safe and unsafe back then was also very different. But there's also a lot of good information that comes from Scripture that tells us, hey, if people want to come be part of our group, be part of our melting pot, that's wonderful. But they have to respect, there's that respect, they have to respect our values and our beliefs and not try to push theirs on us.